You have diarrhea, I'm in great shape. All diarrhea should first be thought of as being acute. Oh, that's a cute little diarrhea you have. No, not cute diarrhea, acute. All diarrhea first should be thought of as being acute diarrhea, and we should always exclude infection first. We should always exclude infection. How do you know what the diarrhea is going to turn out to be? It might be infectious. So first thing to do is to exclude the infectious diarrhea first. In other words, it might turn out to be lactose intolerance, but not until you exclude viral diarrhea. Hey, it might turn out to be inflammatory bowel disease. Oh, not until you exclude the Salmonella, Shigella, Yersinia, E. coli. Not until you have excluded the infection. First exclude the infection. Then you can go on to the other things. Though the short answer for excluding infection is that the first thing that's useful is stool for white cells. So stool for white cells and red cells. Now white cells and red cells, if you have them, white cells and red cells basically mean the same groups of diseases. White cells and red cells are most commonly associated with invasive diarrheas, Salmonella. That's kind of a nice name, isn't it? Hey, what's your last name? Hey, Salmonella. It's like a nice Italian last name. What's your name? Salmonella. Okay, Yersinia. Yersinia. Salmonella, Shigella, Yersinia. All of these, what's the most common? Campylobacter. Campylobacter and Salmonella are the two most common causes of infectious diarrhea and food poisoning. Now, you cannot distinguish these two by clinical symptoms. You cannot distinguish between any of these, between this, between E. coli, between Salmonella, Shigella, Yersinia, between Campylobacter, between Vibrio, not cholera, because we don't care so much about Vibrio cholera, because it doesn't happen here. Maybe killing a couple million people the rest of the world, but USMLE? Well, not us. We're worried about Vibrio parahemolyticus, but not Vibrio cholera. We're worried about Vibrio parahemolyticus because the most common association with Vibrio parahemolyticus is shellfish. Shellfish? No, shellfish. Mussels, oysters, clams, shellfish, filter feeders. This is what they are in there. They go like this. Did you know that a mussel and an oyster and a clam have to filter nearly 50 gallons of water a day in order to feed themselves? Did you know that those organisms, those filter feeders, have to filter 50 gallons a day? And what are they doing as they're filtering those 50 gallons a day, those filter feeders? Why, they are concentrating all the microorganisms. Why, you could think of a mollusk and a clam and an oyster that every time it breathes in and filters out, it's collecting all the microorganisms that go through it. Why, you could think of a shellfish as a stool concentrating device. Tasty. Get the horseradish. Now you know why you have it with a shot of vodka. It's to sterilize all of the microorganisms that are in the shellfish. I'll tell you, I haven't gone to a raw bar in years unless I take ciprofloxacin in advance because the drinks are so contaminated it's filled with microorganisms and you don't taste them. Shellfish, Vibrio parahemolyticus. What's the association most commonly with E. coli? E. coli 015787 and hemolytic uremic syndrome. Interestingly enough, this fact about the association of hemolytic uremic syndrome and E. coli 015787 has been so published, so talked about, so discussed that we forget that E. coli 015787, why don't they give this thing a name? I don't know. Well, why don't you name it? Why don't you name it like E. coli Susan, E. coli Fatima. I'm tired of saying E. coli 015787, but that's the name. It has been so talked about with this association with hemolytic uremic syndrome that actually that's not one of the most common wrong answers. The two questions that are interesting about this are, number one, don't answer to give antibiotics. Giving antibiotics can potentially make it worse. As the organisms are dying, they theoretically release more Shiga-like toxin, which can worsen the HUS. Point number two is even though the platelet count may go low, 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 low with the hemolytic uremic syndrome, don't give platelets. No, please, please, I want to give platelets. No, no platelets. But the platelet count is so low. Don't give platelets. It can make the clot worse. Oh, please, I want to give platelets. No platelets and no antibiotics. All you've had to know so far is the association. E. coli 015787 and hemolytic uremic syndrome. That's all you have to know. Now, yes, I know. Salmonella with chickens, salmonella with eggs, salmonella with chickens, salmonella with eggs. I know. Salmonella with chickens and eggs. But the question I have for you is, which comes first? The chicken or the egg? What would your mother say? The chicken. Mom would say, the chicken, honey, you better believe it. The chicken comes first. And it happens to be that the ovaries within the chicken are infected with the salmonella. When the organism is passed into the egg, it is passed You getting this? I'm trying to point to my ovaries here. Okay? It's passed transovarially between the chicken's ovaries and the eggs. So that's why you have to go out and choke all the chickens. Because basically, if you just wash off the eggs, it doesn't work. That's why you have to get rid of the flocks. It's the chicken ovaries. Wow, infected chicken ovaries. Tasty. Now, chickens and eggs, and it's the ovaries in the chicken. Now, if you go down to the local supermarket, which I will avoid mentioning by name for liability issues, but if you go down to the local supermarket and you're the kind of person that you have such a dull social life that, God, the only action you're getting is in the poultry section. And so you go down with a swab and some agar and you say, let me culture all the chickens. You can actually culture microorganisms from a minimum of 16%, 1 out of 6 chickens, and as many as 60% of the birds. The raw chickens are infected or contaminated, colonized with these organisms, one of them, somewhere between 1 out of every 2 and 1 out of every 6 chickens. From 16 to 50 or 60% are actually covered with bacteria in the store. That's a real high-class store. Underneath the plastic wrap is these bugs. So if you're worried about biological weapons, check the poultry section. They're there. Anytime you want, you can find drug-resistant E. coli, okay, and drug-resistant salmonella. It's there all the time. So that's both salmonella and campylobacter. E. coli 0157H7 with hemolytic uremic syndrome. Don't give platelets, don't give antibiotics. Vibrio parahemolyticus with shellfish. Now, these organisms all give red cells. These organisms all give white cells. The only way to tell for sure the exact etiology is you have to culture them. The only way to tell for sure the exact etiology is with a bacterial culture. The only way to tell an exact etiology is with the culture. You can't tell for sure. The thing about chickens and eggs is suggestive. Now, the things that don't give white cells or bacteria, white cells or red cells, pardon me, white cells and red cells, viruses do not give white cells or red cells. They're not invasive. Giardia does not give white cells or red cells. Cryptosporidium does not give white cells or red cells. Cryptosporidia, Isospora or Isospora, depending on where you like to put the emphasis, does not give white cells or red cells. And the preformed toxins, such as Clostridium perfringens, preformed toxins, does not give white cells or red cells. Look for the turkey that your mother left out last night and you stumbled in at 4 o'clock in the morning and eat the turkey that your mother made at 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. The turkey that's been out on the counter for 12 hours. God, what's that special something Mom puts on the turkey? Clostridium perfringens. Preformed toxin, but no red cells, no white cells. The other preformed toxins, such as Staph aureus and my favorite and yours, Bacillus cereus, and I like Bacillus cereus because when I ask people the diagnosis, they always yell out at me, be serious. I am being serious. Bacillus cereus. So Bacillus cereus and Staph aureus preformed toxins don't give blood. No blood? Nein Blut? Nie Krov. So therefore, you are going to have just diarrhea and you can't distinguish them until after you've done specific tests. So who gets giardiasis? People with unfiltered water. Unfiltered water, the guy who's out fishing in the stream. You're out there in Wyoming. You're out there, Dick Cheney and you. Hey Dick, what do you got? Nothing. Okay, you're out there fishing. Okay. The post-retirement Dick Cheney, giardiasis, unfiltered mountain streams, gay men, campers, gay men on a camping trip, the happy camper. Okay. Cryptosporidiosis is going to be an HIV with less than 100 T cells. Same thing for Isospora. These things are both HIV-related bugs. Giardiasis. I would have said stool, ova, and parasite examination, except now we're going to stay stool Giardia antigen. So if on the GI tape I say stool antigen, but in the infectious disease tape it says ova and parasite exam, and that's because you could tell from the number of hairs in my head that tape was made a little while ago, not too long ago, but it said ova and parasite exam. It used to be stool for Giardia antigen is more accurate. 90% will be detected with stool for Giardia antigen, whereas ova and parasite exams, even 3 of them, pick up only 80% of giardiasis. Only 80%, even after 3. So 1 gives a better sensitivity than 3 of those. Cryptosporidia is actually diagnosed with a modified acid-fast stain. Acid-fast? You mean like tuberculosis? AFB, acid-fast? Yes, but AFB stands for acid-fast bacilli. This is not a bacillus. It's a protozoan. Okay? It is a parasite. So it's a modified acid-fast stain. Giardiasis was treated with metronidazole, and it is treated with metronidazole. You will answer paromomycin for cryptosporidiosis, paromomycin, and you go, paromomycin. First of all, I don't like anything that stands like paromo. Oh, this is